I've taken the lead on this PDMA project, the project to fight poverty. So how did this happen? Any of you who know me know I'm always trying to find new things to do. And the idea was that we had the PDMA organization together. We have this collection of absolutely brilliant minds with expertise in innovation, product development, marketing, etc. And how could we use the power of the PDMA, the power of these wonderful minds, to help a social cause? So we picked the social cause of poverty and identified Grameen Bank. And, you know, what's the benefit to PDMA? Why does the PDMA want to do this other than the obvious answer of, well, you're helping a social cause, but this kind of work, doing work together that's not directly just our learning but giving back, it also bridges a lot of gaps within the PDMA. Because it doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter what kind of member you are, it doesn't matter whether you're a consultant or a service provider, in what industry you happen to participate or what function you happen to participate. Everyone's equal when you're starting to do these incredible, serious games. We're using our knowledge of business process, our knowledge of innovation, and applying this in a new and different way for something very positive, for something very important. So on the stage with me here is Luke Hohmann. He's the CEO of Games for Democracy, Serious Games for Complex Problems, and Katherine Rosenberg, the Director of Education, and I can't read my own writing, for Grameen America. Grameen America is a part of the bigger Grameen Bank, but it is essentially a startup looking at trying to solve these problems in America. So I'm going to sit down with them, and we're going to have a conversation around how this project went, and we'd like you to participate at some point.
Thank you, Robin.
All right, Katherine, I wanted to start with thanking you for participating with us and asking you, how was this experience for you? I mean, you're not a member of this community in general, so tell me how this was for you in doing these Games for Democracy, addressing poverty for your organization.
Sure. Well, thanks everybody for having me. It was definitely a new approach to solving some of the challenges that we face as a 501c3 and as sort of a more innovative way to solve poverty here in the United States. So it was something brand new, but really interesting. I think we got a lot out of the process, and just going through some of the answers that you all had provided over the last 24 to 36 hours, we have some really creative ideas that are helping to solve a lot of the challenges we have. So we still have to dissect them and go through them because they are new to us. But I think when we think about working with new organizations or targeting corporations, I think a lot of these ideas that have been provided from the folks at the conference will help us to engage different partners in the future.
Is there anything specific that you can identify as a key learning or something that really popped out at you that you were surprised about in terms of any of the results?
I think some of the metrics were actually really interesting. One of the games that Luke designed was in response to our question of how do we actually provide answers to various stakeholders. So whether it's funders or just individuals that are interested, how do we measure the impact of our success? And we got a couple of really different ideas that, and to be completely honest, they're things that I currently sitting here don't actually understand what they are, but I think that once we dive through them, and I think it's going to be really helpful moving forward in order to provide that type of information to the outside world.
And what do you think of this kind of an approach, being in part of a conference, in the exhibit hall, working with such a varied group and using games versus just questions and certain, how did you feel about this approach, and would you recommend it to someone else?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I can speak for a lot of folks that are in my position in the sense that I wasn't entirely sure what the idea of playing games to solve problems was all about until I really got here. And it was a brand new way of figuring out, getting people to wrap their minds around a challenge and, different ways that they actually create solutions to that challenge. So I'm not sure, when you ask a person, what metrics would you use to provide answers about Grameen America, I think you would get a very different answer than if you were just playing through a game. So I think it's a really creative and different way that gets people thinking about different problems and providing different types of answers that are really going to be helpful in the future.
Can you give us an example of just one thing that you were surprised, anything that you remember reading some of the sheets?
The net, what was it? I can't even. The net promoter score was something, again, that I have no idea what that is. I mean, Luke explained it to me last night, but again, from a nonprofit perspective, it's not something we do. But, I mean, I think for everybody that is at the conference, that's something that's a no-brainer and something really useful. So I think we're going to try to figure out how to actually implement that at Grameen America so that people, you know, from different backgrounds can actually appreciate the impact that we have.
Yeah, if you think about the things that we do as product managers, another metric that stuck out was this concept of measuring brand loyalty. And of course, we just heard a presentation from Coach, which has extremely strong brand and brand loyalty, and they measure it and they track it. And when we were going through the feedback from the participants last night, Katherine said, brand loyalty, you know, that's really interesting, and do product managers measure this? And like, yes, and as I said this to Robin, and Robin chuckled, and she's like, lots of ways. But for Grameen, it's not something that is top of mind, and yet it is important for Grameen because they have such a great brand. And we talked about how brand loyalty can directly affect donors, and more importantly, the right brand will build trust with the entrepreneurs that they fund, because sometimes the entrepreneurs you fund are a little scared about this whole funding process. And I think you should talk about that, because it ties into this notion of, if I have the right brand, the people who are afraid of filling out forms will come to me.
I mean, when we started 3 years ago, essentially what we do is we provide very small loans to very poor people here in the U.S. so they can start a business. And our competitor on the street right now is actually a loan shark, or a very informal financial provider, and they're charging 300% to 400% interest rate, and that's our biggest competitor. Obviously, our interest rate is significantly lower. But when we first sat down in New York City 3 years ago, the individual that runs our field operations was going door to door, and he was telling people about this product and this great loan and what they could do with it and how they could grow their businesses, and people literally thought he was in the mafia. I mean, nobody actually believed that this was a real product that that they could take advantage of. And so that's sort of what we've been doing over the past 3 years, is trying to build our brand in New York City and in the U.S. I think, you know, for those of you familiar with microfinance or Grameen, there's Grameen Bank, there's Grameen Foundation, there's lots of little pieces of Grameen. But what we're really passionate about right now is building our brand and building it and measuring it so that not only donors and potential funders know who we are, but also so that the entrepreneurs on the street know who we are, know they can come to us, know that they can trust us, and that our product is a valued product and is legitimate.
So Luke, as you tried to design the games for this, what were your challenges, and how do you feel about the outcome?
Well, the outcome is great, but the challenge is, you know, when we started this process, it felt daunting, and then what happened that made it really magical was Robin, you and Sabina, who many people have heard her name, they reached out to the other vendors, and we were able to partner with Decision Analyst, with Innovaro, with Ideas to Go, and with Accept Software. And suddenly the task became much easier, because all of these vendors have their own set of techniques and their own creativity and their own ways of developing insights into markets and developing insights into problems and engaging people and making their process accessible and fun. So what happened is this crazy idea that we decided to embark on suddenly got much easier, because all of these companies said, yes, we'll lend a helping hand, and they participated in phone calls and lots of planning, and they were absolutely marvelous organizations to work with, and they helped tremendously.
So for anyone who didn't participate, do you want to describe any of the specific things that took place and what some of the outcomes were?
Yeah, and I'm going to use our terminology for some of these activities and some of these games, even though I want to highlight that some of the other participating vendors have very similar techniques, and they might call it something else. And just kind of starting with Innovaro, they helped with a game that we call Spiderweb, which was really designed to understand the relationships that must exist when a social entrepreneur wants to be more successful in their business. And then they added this concept of tension points, which are the ideas of, well, we might want to have a relationship between a social entrepreneur and an established company, but it may be very difficult to form that relationship because of these tension points. And if we can understand the relationship and understand the tension point, we can be more effective in resolving them. Over at Ideas to Go, we were looking at ways in which we could understand the different funding priorities or the different funding preferences of the PDMA members. We have lots of options to help out in the world, and Grameen is great, and there are a lot of organizations to explore, and they were very interested in seeing what are the perceptions from a global perspective, and that was a very powerful and motivating game because people got to work together to fund initiatives. At Accept Software, we were looking at metrics, and that was a transformational game where one group of people would come up with a metric, and then other people would try and transform it into something that Grameen could use. And like Katherine said, the Net Promoter Score was one that definitely stood out. At Decision Analyst, we were using a game that we call Remember the Future, and they call Walking Backward, to help identify some of the steps or some of the activities that an entrepreneur might take after year one is successful on the way to year 3. And we talk about helping people get started in business and getting them through their first year, but sometimes the question is, well, what happens after year 1? We don't want to strand them because they still need help. They still need growth. And then finally at the Games for Democracy booth, we were looking at different ways to engage funding or fundraising activities based on the ways that product managers who are highly skilled at getting money for their releases use in their business, to see if we could apply some of those techniques in the nonprofit sector. So all of these booths were attacking this very complex problem from different angles and getting different insights.
That's great. Do you want to highlight any other results, or else I'm going to see if there's any questions? Well,
what I would like to say is that, like Katherine said, we gotta. Here it is. There's this alone. This is a tremendous amount of feedback, plus rolled up paper, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. So me and my team are going to be going back into our offices, and we'll be post-processing and creating some insights. We're going to work with the PDMA to host and post this information at the PDMA website. And I think that there's this kind of interesting opportunity where maybe the PDMA can continue to share this kind of information of product management knowledge with nonprofits, because there was a lot of pollination from that process.
So I really want to thank Katherine, and I also want to thank Luke for donating his time, having all his people here, and really putting so much effort and so much of your energy and your expertise into this project that was my crazy brainchild at some point. I want to thank you all for participating in our serious games. You've definitely benefited Grameen and Katherine personally, because it makes her life more interesting, at least. Maybe not easier, but definitely more interesting. We will summarize all of this. You will see the results. May have to go to the website to see it, because I don't think we'll send you individual emails. But you will see the results, and we will find ways to keep this going. We will find ways to go out to our chapters, our affiliates, and keep this momentum up, and hopefully have another session next year. So thank you so much. Thank you for being with the PDMA, and I appreciate all of you, and safe travels.